Welcome back to another episode of Talk Illini, brought to you by Orange and Blue News and the On3 Network. My name is Sunny Verma. Make sure you hit the like on this video and make sure you're subscribed to the channel where we're going to provide you coverage each and every day, including when I don't want to. That includes today when it comes to that debacle of a football game yesterday. Figured we'd do a quick recap of the game, and then I'll bring on a guest and we'll kind of discuss what we saw. Because quite honestly, that one hurt. Illinois entered Husky Stadium ranked, rested, and ready to make a statement. And instead, they walked out drenched, defeated, and looking like a team that had more questions than answers, especially on defense. Washington rolled a 42-25 victory over the Illini. And if we're being honest, the score almost flatters Illinois. This wasn't a fluke. It was a full-on exposure. Let's get this out of the way. DeMond Williams Jr., the guy that we all knew could be a dangerous threat, well, he absolutely torched the Illini. 4 total touchdowns, 346 yards of offense, and not once did Illinois make him uncomfortable. You could have put a lawn chair back there in the pocket and let him relax. The Huskies scored touchdowns on 6 of 8 drives and racked up 449 yards. And their only failed drive was a dropped pass. That was it. Denzel Boston looked like Marvin Harrison Jr. 2.0, 10 catches, 153 yards, and a touchdown. And the Illini defense, hands on hips, heads down, and completely out of sync. The crazy thing is, Illinois actually led late in the second quarter. Luke Altmyer was very sharp early. He hit Colin Dixon and Tanner Arkin for touchdowns to take a 17-14 lead. And for a split second, it felt like the offense had figured something out. But then, right before halftime, Washington dialed up a trick play, a reverse pass from Denzel Boston to Jonah Coleman, and boom, momentum gone. From there, it was all downhill. Missed tackles, soft zone coverage, no pass rush, and a third down defense that I feel now I can officially say has reached rock bottom. The Huskies went 8 for 10 on third downs, including 3 of 3 on third and long. One of them being a 3rd and 18, where Williams scrambled for 25 yards. You could hear Bret Bielema's headset crackling in Champaign. After the game, Bielema looked stunned. He usually greets every player in the tunnel, win or lose. Low fives, quick hugs, words of encouragement. Not this time. Just stood there, silent, staring back at the field. Later, he said what we were all thinking. I'm frustrated with the defense. And yeah, who isn't? This group has now given up 40 points per game in Big Ten play. They had a bye week to fix things, and somehow it got worse. Gabe Yakus said it best. A lot of dudes are simply not doing their jobs. And that's blunt. There were a few bright spots. Altmyer battled 199 yards, had 2 touchdowns. He did have 2 picks. And once again, and this is not something that you want to have, he led the team in rushing. Hank Beatty looked good. Cole Russ continues to improve every single week. And even Jordan Anderson found the end zone for the very first time. But all that feels secondary when the defense just simply can't get off the field. And now Illinois sits at 5-3. The playoff dream is officially gone. And Bret Bielema saying he may need to get more involved with the defense. Well, that's coach speak for something is changing soon. Rutgers comes to town next week, and at this point, it's not anymore about style of points. It's about survival. Illinois has an easier stretch ahead, but if this defense doesn't find an identity, even the easy games won't be easy. You can't give up 40 a week and call yourself a contender. Washington simply just reminded everyone of that. And to talk about that and more, I'm going to be bringing on Carson Bounds from the On3 Network. Carson, thanks for joining. You know what? I'll cede the floor to you. What were your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, man. I mean, the theme of the day, like I said, is defense. And I rewatched the entire game last night. I don't know why I
Bless
did
your
that to
soul.
myself, but I
Yeah.
did. Uh, and like, there's some glaring holes where the theme throughout the year has been so like secondary play for the most part. And don't get me wrong, they had a bad game. We could touch that in a little bit, but What's concerning to me is we're starting to see other facets of the defense start to break down as well. The defensive line was incredibly inefficient yesterday. I sent out a tweet like Gabe Akis had his second worst game of his career according to PFF, a 46.9 defensive grade. Uh, there was a really bad play where they stacked on a trick play, Washington's offense. They put two receivers on the right side of the field. We had no corners on that side of the field, and Gabe had to drop back in the coverage and give up a touchdown in the red zone. That's not on Gabe. It's not his job to cover receivers, but why are we putting Gabe Akis into positions where he has to cover the deep secondary in the red
And
zone?
yeah, and that's one of my frustrations, right? Like, Gabe Backus, as you mentioned, did not have a good game. PFF confirmed that, and quite honestly, a lot of our eyes confirmed that. But I've been watching these all 22s every single week, and I hate to say this, but in a lot of ways, I feel like the defense is not setting Gabe up for success, given his skill set either. They made it clear the game plan yesterday was to keep Damon Williams in front of you. Don't let him beat you with his legs. Sound strategy. It makes sense. And it succeeded for Illinois in the past. But clearly it didn't work yesterday. And for me, the frustrations was, and like literally, we have a Talk Illini Discord. If you're not in that Discord, please, I'll post a link in the description. When the play happened, which I brought up, 3rd and 18, and you're already insecure about it because we know what our third down defense looks like, but you have a little hope because it's 18 yards. And to see Damon Williams just simply almost run touch free for those 25 yards. Like, if you're going to keep him in front of you, fine. But have one guy keeping an eye on him. Have one spy, if not two spies. And it's not even like I can sit here and vent. Illini fans can sit here and be perplexed and confused and be angry about it. But I think it's notable that the commentators yesterday who are watching the game, who are discussing the game in as most professional way possible, were venting about the same exact things. They were literally saying words like, I'm not sure what the defense was thinking there, or why, they're setting up this way or that way. It's not something that's just in our circle now. Like, people are questioning what the game plan was, for this game on Saturday. And the frustrating part is, it's one thing if it was a short week, you had little time to prepare, or two vastly different teams on back-to-back weeks. You had 2 weeks to prepare. And this was a must-win game by all accounts. You went into Champaign to play Ohio State, but most people understood that you weren't going to win that game. You kept it respectable. I'll put it there. But this game against Washington, it was a do or die situation against another team that you're battling in essentially the same tier. And you both know that the schedule gets easier from there on out. And so a victory on Saturday would give you at least the opportunities to start thinking more serious about a college football playoff. Washington showed up. The Illinois offense showed up. The Illinois defense didn't. And it just leaves such a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah, I entirely agree.
What would you say? Okay, you know what? Let's try to be a little positive. Is there any positives you took from this game?
Yeah, I mean, Hank Beatty continues his streak of generally solid performances, 6 for 73. Colin Dixon, he continues to like not put a big yardage outside the Indiana game, but he's finding the end zone. He's making plays here and there. There's still a couple passes where like he's clearly off connection with Luke a little bit, like they're just out of rhythm. And there was a drop pass, a drop deep ball, kind of like early third quarter yesterday that got some fans' hopes up and then ended up not getting converted. Luke Altmyer also continues to be solid. I mean, Luke had, I think, the second or third highest PFF grade on the team yesterday, 72.4 overall. I mean, and to do that with two picks as well is not easy to do. So, 22 of 34, 199 passing, and 48 rushing yards. He actually outrushed Williams yesterday, which kind of caught me off guard going back and looking at the stat sheet. But Luke was solid. It wasn't enough to elevate the team to a win, and he couldn't keep the offense on the field for as long as they needed to prevent the defense from doing what the defense does. But he was relatively solid, and he had to take some big risks, and he turned the ball over a couple times later in the game. But when he was on schedule and playing his game early on, he looked good.
Yeah, and that's kind of the travesty in all this, right? Like Luke is arguably the best quarterback we've ever had here in Champaign. And, when you were returning 16, 18 guys from last year's starters, and you're bringing back a quarterback who you knew was going to be good. You have him in his third year playing under the same system, which is practically a cheat code in modern day college athletics. And then you give him this type of defense. Like this is a championship winning quarterback that you have. And here at Illinois, especially, long-term fans will know, we very rarely have that wearing the orange and blue helmets. And just, I think that's where kind of the frustration from this Illini fan base comes from. Because, expectations were there. There was college football playoff whispers. And don't get me wrong, like I'm venting a little bit. Big picture-wise, if this team ultimately ends up with 8-9 wins, it's still a successful season. I'm just looking at the minute details in the sense where we know we're going to be rebuilding next year. And I guess my question to you is, let me talk about the positives real quick, and then let's get to the I say the negatives or the defense, but the negatives is what I mean. I thought the offensive line actually probably had its best game when it comes to just pure blocking, both passing and rushing, which is ironic because finally both aspects of the offensive line performed, but they also wanted you to jam a knife in your eyes because of the stupid penalties that they took, right? Like they just can't get the whole game together. And that was frustrating for me, but I did want to give a little love to the offensive line because pretty much all season long, I feel like they've been one of the weakest groups that we've had. But let's switch to the defense. And for me, like Carson, I guess I just cede the floor to you. Like, what do you think? Is there a way to turn things around in the back half of the schedule? I mean, all these games are winnable, but at the same time, like that's the only way I can phrase it. It's winnable. It's not like easy victories, which, a team that most people are projecting to win 8-9 games, going up against teams that, may only win 3 or 4, you would think you'd feel more confident about it. But I don't know if there's a single remaining game left in our schedule that I feel confident in winning. Is there a chance to turn this thing around?
Yes, there is. What concerns me is I don't know if it's going to be within the next 6 days. I don't know if you watched the Rutgers game yesterday, but Ethan Kaliakmanis, 300 and some change passing through the air, big comeback. Rutgers got the win. They did take some help from a late game fumble, but like Rutgers' passing attack is the strength of their offense, and that concerns me considering we're 6 days away from playing them at Memorial Stadium. Um, Looking at the secondary, I we rotated in like 8 guys yesterday. And if you had to guess, who do you think the highest graded secondary player on the team was yesterday?
I mean, Heckle looked awful. Jaheim Clark got missed. Maybe Matthew Bailey. I think Matthew Bailey was the only average player on the secondary.
Tyler Strand.
Oh my gosh! See, and that's all you need to know. If Tyler Strain was your best defender in a football game, your defense probably didn't perform all that well.
Yeah. Juice actually had a career low 43.8 grade, 32.8 run defense grade, which is like a sub 50 is bad. A 30 is, generationally terrible. I think that's the lowest grade anybody's posted all year in this team. So
Well, I
that's
mean, I feel like that entire team must have had a sub 50 for the most part then, especially on the defensive side.
yeah, yeah. Strain was the only dude above 55 in the entire secondary, outside of Matt Bailey, who was like a 60. The only player that we had on defense that actually had a positive grade was Joe Barna, who had
Oh.
like a 70 something. Like he's good, but he also only played like 20 snaps, so it doesn't really do that much for us.
Carson, what are your thoughts? I guess we have to discuss it. It's the topic of the day when it comes to Illini fans. Aaron Henry, at this point, you're giving up 40 plus points per game in Big Ten play. He's in year 3 now, right? We're in year 3. It shouldn't be considered a trial job. You're playing with the big boys. You're playing in the Big Ten conference. You won 10 games last year, and it's one of those where like I feel like I'm very careful in how I word this. Like Bret Bielema has brought us to a respectable level from where we were when he took over. But at the same time, like we have aspirations to want to get better every single year. And I do think we have the right guy in charge to get us better every single year. But if I can see it, if the national analysts can see it, something needs to change with our defense. Do you think Bret Bielema sees it enough that if things continue the way that they've gone this year, that he's going to be willing to make a change in the offseason when it comes to the defensive coordinator?
I don't know, man. I mean, Aaron Henry is like kind of like one of his prodigies, right? He played for him.
That's what makes
He's
it
brought him
hard.
up in a system. It's one of those deals too. I think Henry probably needed another year or two of being a DB's coach before he got promoted. Yeah, I had the privilege of working with him both as a DB's coach and his first year as a DC, which, I mean, on field, it was a tough result. You remember the Northwestern loss that killed our bowl game chances in the last game of the season that year. But like Coach Henry is an awesome person and a great coach. The players themselves love the guy, and he's a great developer of talent. I just schematically, I don't think he's definitely not a savant when it comes to calling up plays. And that's as a coordinator, that is probably the most important part of game day is calling the right plays. And so I think there's probably further development that needs to be had. I think for this season, I think a fair thing would be for Bielema to take over a portion of the play calling and have some more influence on defense. I know that he doesn't necessarily have time to run in the entire defense, but I think having some interference from Coach B would be a positive, and I think it'd also be beneficial for Coach Henry because he's a guy they want to keep him around. I don't see them wanting to get rid of a guy like that. It's tough because the weaknesses have hurt you this year.
You're exactly right. Again, that's what kind of makes it frustrating. Aaron Henry, for all intents and purposes, really looks like a very honorable, admirable human being. And him and Bret Bielema do have a very close relationship, which I know makes this really tough internally for Bret. But I feel like one of the reasons that Aaron Henry was elevated to the defensive coordinator spot was because he was he's great at relationship building, right? He was an ace recruiter as a defensive back. And when you watch interviews with him when he was in that role, you're like, yeah, this is a future defensive coordinator. This is a future, maybe even head coach someday. But now, you look at the talent level of this Illinois football team. And I know, again, we're about to have the back-to-back most successful seasons we've had in a very long time here in Champaign. But I wouldn't say it's because of talent necessarily. I think we're good and we're getting better every year. And I think it's safer to say the floor is getting higher, but doesn't mean that the ceiling is necessarily as high as most of our competitors in the Big Ten Conference. The recruiting classes suggest as much. Not that it's a huge deal. We know that when we hired Bret Bielema, like that's what we signed up for. Even when Bret Bielema was winning Rose Bowls, he wasn't getting outstanding recruiting classes. It was he was and is a developmental coach. But now I just sit here and I watch that game, again on Saturday, and for me, it's like I love the story of getting the guys who only play, 8-man football, and you turn him into an average player, or Matthew Bailey you sign kind of randomly on the last day. Those stories are fantastic, and I get it, but you need the elite guys too. You need the playmakers too, because if you don't have the playmakers, then all the pressure is on the coaching. And if the coaching isn't living up to the standard that it needs to be, and I think it's clear as day right now, the defensive side of the football simply isn't, then no head coach, no matter how good he is, and I think Bret Bielema is one of the best in the country, no head coach can make up for maybe slightly above average talent combined with an average defensive coordinator. And I think I'm being generous right now when I call Aaron Henry an average defensive coordinator. Bret Bielema in some ways has set himself up to fail. And that's why I think during this offseason, okay, let me be clear. I don't think there's anyone who has a colder hot seat in the country than Bret Bielema. I don't even think there's even a whisper of him and any sort of job insecurity. But what I am saying is the Geese family just donated $100 million to our football program. And Josh Whitman, understands as well as anybody how important football is to the perspective of any athletic department. That performance yesterday, and quite honestly, the defensive performance all season long, is simply not acceptable. If you're confident you have the right man in charge, that's step one. But you also have to feel confident that that man in charge is willing to make the hard decisions, the hard sacrifices. And that includes when it means that, hey, I know, I coached you back in the day. I've become a mentor towards you, and I've seen you grow up, and I know you're a good, honorable family man, but I have a job to do. And I just want to see right now, I'm hopeful in the offseason that things continue this way, that Bret Bielema can do that. I just don't know if he can.
Yeah, same boat as you there. I don't know which way he's going to go, but I am hopeful that it will get a little bit better. I just from like a recruiting perspective, like I remember from my time with the team watching the defensive practice. What stood out to me is like we had guys, similar rankings. Spoon was we have Devin Witherspoon was an on-ranked player out of high school. Quan Martin was like the second lowest signee in a class. What stood out to me about like especially the guys in the secondary is they were talented just like these guys that we have now, but they also were incredibly gritty. They were extremely competitive. I I mean, there's something to be said about just having that dog mentality. And while these kids are talented that we have now, I don't know just like how much grit and resilience they have. Like once they get down, they don't show that they're able to like fight through adversity on the field. And I don't know if that's something you could even necessarily coach. Like you could definitely encourage them to get their heads screwed on right, but I don't even know if that's something that's necessarily on Coach Henry. Like either you have the ability to fight through adversity or you don't. And that's I think more of a recruiting issue at this point.
We'll see if they have the ability to fight through adversity. Look, we felt this low after the Indiana game too, right? And a lot of folks were concerned and paranoid that maybe this team had given up and that the season at that point was over. And that's not what happened. The following week, Illinois takes on USC in a game that they were a touchdown underdog in and comes out victorious. Right now, the mood is clearly pretty low when it comes to Illini football, but we have a game up against the Rutgers, who come to Champaign. They've lost, I think, 4 of 5, although, as you mentioned, that they did beat the Purdue Boilermakers. But we'll have more coverage of that game and much more right here on Orange and Blue News, right here on Talk Illini. Carson, can you let the folks know where they can find your work before we get out of here?
Yeah, Orange and Blue News, Illinois on 3. I just published an article at midnight last night. Position group grades from the game. We've covered a lot of the bases here, but if you want to read my full insights, you can find it at orangeandbluenews.com.
Make sure you've hit the subscribe to this channel. It's a brand new channel. We continue to grow. Make sure you hit the like on this video, and I promise, again, we're going to have a lot more coverage of the Rutgers game as, we're going to monitor this whole defensive coordinator situation and much more right here on Talk Illini. Until next time, ILL.